Happy Tuesday, football fans. It's Isaac Saenz here, and I thank you for tuning in to another edition of the ProFootballChase podcast. In today's episode, Jerel Worthy and I preview Super Bowl 54 and give our score prediction. Plus, NFL defensive tackle Mike Daniels joins the show to give his thoughts on the matchup. This is the ProFootballChase podcast, a podcast that has featured interviews with Rams wide receiver Robert Woods.
To reach 1,000 yards, and last year, unfortunately, I got hurt midway in the season. But other than that, just working and grinding to get to this point, and finally broke it with a lot of games left.
Packers wide receiver Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
Just the fact that we got a all-pro on the other side of the ball. In Devontae. So when you got a guy like that, that's just going to get the main focus. Obviously, people start to know my name a little bit after I made a few plays here and there.
Broncos offensive guard Ronald Leary.
It would either have to be a counter or a pin and pull play when we get on the edge and run. I think it's always impressive when big guys can get out that stance and move and hit somebody. So,
and rising stars Dalton Risner, Charles Amenahu, and Jawan Williams. This is a podcast that offers player perspectives from some well-decorated veterans, including T.J. Houshmandzadeh.
And people will say, "Oh, well, is Dak Prescott a franchise quarterback? Look at his record; it tells you he is. Oh, he has a great defense. He has Ezekiel Elliott. You tell me a quarterback in the entire NFL that's not Tom Brady that does more with less."
Game previews, recaps, and analysis. Turn the volume up. The chase is on, and the chase is live. Good morning, everybody. Welcome into the ProFootballChase podcast. It's Isaac Saenz with you all. We are previewing Super Bowl 54. We got Jerel Worthy on the line, Mike Daniels, Pro Bowl defensive tackle. We're going to chat up some of these teams, Chiefs, 49ers. So first things first, Jerel, how you doing, man?
I'm doing excellent this morning. I'm excited to talk about the Super Bowl, excited to talk about everything that comes with it. Basically, one of the greatest sporting events, if not the greatest sporting event in sports. So I'm excited to discuss.
Mike, how you doing, man?
Man, I'm great. Sitting here getting by together and everything, and definitely looking forward to the Super Bowl. Obviously, that's a holiday in my household growing up. So, I carry on the tradition, and with the parents here and everything, get to watch it with my sons now, which is great. So, yeah, I'm ready for this.
They had Super Bowl opening night on Monday night where they had some of the media come out, both teams getting on the big stage there in Miami. So this is the first time these two teams will meet in a Super Bowl, and the first Super Bowl appearance for the Chiefs in 50 years. Now this will be the 49ers' 7th Super Bowl appearance. So let's go ahead and toss it to Mike first, then we'll go to Jerel. So Mike, we know obviously you played for the Packers for a while. You played with the Lions in 2019. But when you look at the makeup of both San Francisco, we know their defense is dominant. And you look at Kansas City and their high-powered offense. What are some matchups that you're looking forward to watching in this game?
Man, it's got to be the San Francisco run game versus the Kansas City, defense front seven. And the reason I say that is because we saw what the 49ers did against Green Bay. And Green Bay got 2 Pro Bowl defensive linemen with Darius Smith, you could argue Preston was definitely had a Pro Bowl season this year, and Kenny Clark. So you the 2 edge guys and then right in the middle, and they, they tore them up. Blake Martinez is a good linebacker. Always top 5 in tackles, and even he had his struggles going against them. And then Goodson came in and did some good things for them. So the 49ers didn't care about any of that. Ran right through them. You look at Kansas City, they definitely have a lot of talent up front. I really like their linebackers. I'm not biased because Hitchens is an Iowa guy, and I went to Iowa when we played together. I'm not biased at all. He's a really good linebacker. He's a really good linebacker. That's a shot at Jerel, Michigan State, you know. But we took an L to them last game I played, so I can't talk. But anyway, this is a real good linebacker. They got a really good defensive line, but they have been vulnerable in the run game. So it's going to be an interesting battle to see.
Man, I would have to piggyback off of Mike, man. I think, obviously when it comes down to it, the Kansas City Chiefs, for the most part, they've been riding on a high defensively, like I said in previous podcasts, from at least week 12 up into this postseason, they've been having opportunities, aside from the fluke game against the Houston Texans. The defense in Kansas City has been riding on the high, only giving up around 14 points a game. And so at the end of the day, the running game is going to be established with the 49ers. But at the end of the day, the addition of Chris Jones coming back into the lineup and inserting him, I think it's gonna prove to pay off real big dividends for this defense. If they can get Jimmy Garoppolo into a lot of third and long situations, which Spagnuolo loves to dial up a plethora of exotic blitzes using honey badger in a variety of positions, I think it's going to be able to really be able to stop this 49ers offense, because obviously Jimmy Garoppolo threw 8 passes the week before last, and I just think, to me, man, I just don't think that that's going to be able to be a formula to win the Super Bowl. Especially going up against the Kansas City and averaging 30 points per game. And so I think the interior is going to have to be, and so I'm excited about seeing that.
Yeah, and look at San Francisco. They rushed for 186 yards in the divisional round victory over the Vikings. 285 against Green Bay, as Mike just alluded to. Raheem Mostert, you got Tevin Coleman, who's working his way back from that shoulder injury. But when you look at San Francisco, the starting 5, Joe Staley, Laken Tomlinson, Ben Garland, Mike Person, and Mike McGlinchey, those guys can just dominate the trenches, and they did that. Now, looking at Kansas City's front 7, you got Chris Jones. Of course, the health of him is big because he's been limited by that calf injury, and so he's able to get back to full health. You got Derek Nottie there as well. So that is an intriguing matchup in the trenches. But one matchup I'm looking forward to seeing is how these tight ends are going to be involved in the game. You got Travis Kelce for the Chiefs. You got George Kittle for the 49ers. You got Tyrann Mathieu potentially lining up opposite of George Kittle. And then we'll see how the Niners handle Travis Kelce, whether it be with Tart, he's one of the safeties back there, Jimmy Ward. So I'm really intrigued to see the impact of both these dominant pass catchers that can also be really good in the run game as well.
Yeah, I think, personally, when I look at Travis Kelce and what he's been able to do, having over 1,200 yards receiving, he's essentially another receiver out there. And that's what makes this Kansas City team so dangerous, because they have a lot of the speedsters on the outside. But when you have a guy that's big and physical, but can also stretch the field, I think for the most part, it's going to be very scary for this San Francisco 49ers defense. And I think, their defensive line is going to have to come ready to play. I think, obviously, they've been proven to be extremely productive this season. But for me, the matchup, I want to properly say this name right, but the strong safety for the 49ers, Jaquizzi Tart versus Travis Kelce. Obviously, he's going to be doing, majority of the covering of Travis Kelce. And we seen, a couple weeks ago, he gave up a 42-yard touchdown against Jimmy Graham and the Green Bay Packers. And so, obviously, I think that's a concern for me because we know what Travis Kelce can do. I mean, even with a bum hamstring coming out in the second half, we've seen his production, the yards after catch, as well as the yards after contact, because he's not only catching the football, but he's breaking tackles as well. And so when you look at that, man, you have to be able to limit his touches, because at the end of the day, we understand that they're going to have speedsters over the top, but Travis Kelce is the guy that really continues to move the chains forward. And so that's what I'm really interested in seeing.
Yeah, and it's funny we're mentioning tight ends here, because we know Kelce has been the best in the game for quite some time. And now it's like he's playing against the guy that's about to take the mantle from him in George Kittle. And that's going to provide a tough matchup for whoever is playing defensive back. And like you said, Jerel, there's been some struggles exposed by the 49ers in dealing with that. But I still think George Kittle's going to have the bigger day. I mean, Travis Kelce, like we said, he has the bum leg, and he's still going to be dominant no matter what. Even if they just have him out there just as a decoy, he's still dangerous. He can potentially get the ball at any point, especially with Mahomes throwing it. But Kittle basically had the week off a couple weeks ago. And that guy's hungry, and he's itching to get the ball. And Jerel, as a player, when you've been cold, you've been having to say as a pass rusher, hey, we got a running quarterback. We want you to contain him. Next week, it's like, come on, man, I need to get to the quarterback. Okay, well, this guy, he's not a running quarterback. Oh, we turn our ears back all game. And that's kind of the mentality Kittle's going into the game. He's going into this game like, listen, feed me the rock. And he's going to find a way to get open no matter what. And with that threat, that's going to open up the rest of that defense. You got to realize that passing game, they basically had 2 weeks off,
Yep.
And so they showed nothing in the NFC Championship game. They showed nothing. And Jerel, when you get ready for a playoff game, you're going to watch everything from the season, but you're really going to watch, let's say if you're in the divisional round, you're going to watch that wild card game. If you're in the championship game, you're going to watch that. You're going to watch the divisional round and the wild card game. Team playing it. So we know that teams have wrinkles that they show in the playoffs that they didn't have during the season. The 49ers, they didn't have to do too much. They stayed to their game plan to beat the Vikings. And when they played the Packers, I mean, they threw the ball 8 times.
Yeah.
So they really didn't show. They really didn't show much of anything. So we can definitely expect some wrinkles to be displayed during the game on Sunday.
I'm interested to hear y'all's take, Mike and Jerel. I mean, you look at Kansas City, their personnel. You got Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, Mecole Hardman. And then you look at San Francisco's secondary, Richard Sherman, Akulla Witherspoon, Kwan Williams, Jimmy Ward, Jaquiski Tartt. How do you think that San Francisco is going to be able to contain the speed of Kansas City's wideouts, Mike? We'll go to you first.
Wow. So that speed is, I don't want to get talking out of my behind here, but I don't know if we've seen that much speed on one team. And because you have arguably 3 of the fastest players in the NFL, definitely the fastest at their position, all on the same team. And you have a guy that's going to have the ball on the mark. Sometimes you get speedsters, they have to throttle down because they have to throttle down because they don't know if the quarterback's going to get the ball to them perfectly, But when you got guys like this, and you have a guy like Mahomes who's going to say, hey, you get to the point, the ball will be there. And if I need to give a little bit of extra air up under it, because I know you're going to get there faster than I think, then so be it. Mahomes, I think, is going to be the deciding factor with the speed of with the receivers and the running back being able to display all the speed that they have. Because the pass going to get the ball there perfectly for them. So they're going to basically be able to just cut loose. Sometimes, like I said, when you have a speedster, they can't go as fast as they want because the ball may be overthrown, might be underthrown. Mahomes isn't doing that. I mean, quite frankly, we're seeing young greatness in the making right here.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off that. I think, obviously, Mike can attest to this. When you play with a guy that's going to be a potential Hall of Famer, and I think, obviously if Patrick Mahomes continues the success that he's had on the field, he'll definitely be in Canton someday. And so when you have quarterbacks like that and you have the receivers on the outside that are essentially can run anything on the route tree because you have a quarterback that'll be able to place the ball perfect for where, you have the best opportunity to throw it. As a defense, if you're Kansas City, going into this game, you just try not to mess up. When you have a guy like how we did in Aaron Rodgers, we knew defensively all we had to do was essentially play our game and and give them opportunities to score the football. And so, as we seen last week, Aaron Rodgers, obviously had a great statistical game in the second half primarily, but the first half was obviously out of reach because of what the dominance of the 49ers in their rushing attack. And so going into this game, man, the Kansas City Chiefs has to just essentially give Patrick Mahomes in this offense more opportunities to score than the 49ers offense. I think when I'm looking at the skills positions, the speed that they have on the outside, if I'm the San Francisco 49ers, what you want to do is you want to try to have a cover two shell, try to keep everything primarily in front. It's going to be essentially tough, but they have the defensive line in order to play this scheme because the defensive line up front is the most important factor of having a cover two scheme because at the end of the day, the safeties are out wide at the hashes. The corners are playing at a depth to where they can come up and make tackles. You want to keep everything in front. But the running game, the running attack is essentially what's the most vulnerable in a cover two shell. And so I think you have to have great defensive linemen in which the San Francisco 49ers have up front to be able to jump the front, run a lot of games and cause a lot of confusion up front for the Kansas City offense. And so at the end of the day, it's really gonna come down to the pass rushers. D Ford on the outside, can Quan Alexander be able to cover the running backs out the backfield? Because obviously we haven't even talked about Darian Williams and what he's been able to do out the backfield. And obviously we saw a couple weeks ago, his play and what he was able to do out the backfield against the Tennessee Titans as well as against the Houston Texans. And so I'm excited, man, to really see what the 49ers come up with defensively because we're talking about an all-star cast when it comes to the speed and the athleticism of the Kansas City Chiefs. And so, I'm very interested to see what Saleh's going to come up with defensively as far as the scheme.
One thing I'm looking at is, talked about Witherspoon, and he's been benched at times in the playoffs for Emmanuel Moseley, who will start opposite of Richard Sherman. We'll see who lines up first, but that could be a potential area where the Chiefs test the Niners deep down the field with the speed that we all know they have with Tyreek Hill and Mecole Hardman and Sammy Watkins. So that definitely is going to be an interesting concept for San Francisco. And I can't wait to see how these linebackers, I know, Mike, you mentioned Anthony Hitchens, who I believe is one of the most underrated linebackers in the NFL. And then you got Damian Wilson, who also came from Minnesota, who's a very hard-nosed linebacker as well. And so when it comes to stopping San Francisco offensively, Kansas City's going to have some production from Hitchens and Wilson, who have really made some plays in the backfield for Steve Spagnuolo's defense.
Yeah. Once again, I'm going to take it back to Hitchens, right? When you have a linebacker that can command the defense the way he does and command the attention of the offense, like, hey, we're not going to throw in the middle over there because, when he was in college, they used to call him lights out. And because when he came into school, he was I'm not going to say he was knocking people out, right? But let's just say he was delivering the boom on some guys and they elected to not finish practice. See what I'm saying? Clean hits as well. So, Hitch was a monster. And he's developed into an even bigger monster, a smarter monster, a true veteran of the game. He learned so much in Dallas. You got to think he came from learning at Iowa, which they just preach technique. And then he went and learned under Sean Lee in Dallas. And now he's bringing everything that he knows to Kansas City. He's doing a phenomenal job. You can see that. He's going to have the guys ready. He's going to have them lined up where they need to be, doing all the right stuff. And that's why I mentioned that the front seven versus that run game. Because they're going to challenge them. They're not going to shy away from running up the middle. They're not going to shy away from doing the reverses and the pitch passes to the receiver that they did. They're going to challenge Kansas City's run defense. as Jerel said, they're going to try to establish the run. Yeah, we have Kittle and we have the receivers and Garoppolo can get them the ball, but they're definitely going to try to establish the run. And I think Hitchens is he's definitely going to make a claim and get his name out there. Like you said, he's one of the most, he's probably criminally underrated, as I would say. And I think that changes after this Sunday.
I think for me, when I'm looking at this whole thing, obviously we know that they're going to challenge them in the run game, but I think, obviously we talked about George Kittle. We spoke on him earlier. But it's going to be tough, man, because, obviously Honey Badgers has been your Swiss Army knife the entire year. And Tyrann Mathieu had an opportunity to play at a plethora of positions, from corner to nickel to safety, being the extra linebacker down in the box and in a dime and nickel situations. And so I think for me, Kyle Shanahan's going to have he's going to have to pick and choose when he wants to use Kittle in those big play situations. He's going to have to scheme and have a game plan to where he can try to have an opportunity to take advantage of the Kansas City defense when Tyrann Mathieu isn't covering George Kittle. I think for the most part, when they look at it, they feel that their corners have an opportunity to match up against Deebo Samuel and Emmanuel Sanders. Obviously covering the fast receivers that they have in practice each and every week, they're going to feel confident about their abilities going into this game to be able to cover on the outside. I think for me, it's going to be the combination and the communication between Sorensen and Tyrann Mathieu at the safety position. And so if these guys can work together, and if Sorensen has an opportunity to play bigger than expected this week, man, and have an opportunity to really frustrate George Kittle as far as his routes being physical at the line of scrimmage. We obviously know he's a physical freak. He's been playing the entire year with the torn labrum in the shoulder. And so, we know that his mentality and his physicality that he brings to the game is like no other. And so they're going to have to step up and play big. We saw them a couple weeks ago against the Tennessee Titans. They stepped up and answered the call, answered the bell against Derrick Henry and their rushing attack. And we all know, with the first rounders that they have on their offensive line, that's a very tall task to answer. And so I think at the end of the day, man, Sorensen and Tyrann Mathieu, those guys at the safety positions, being able to limit George Kittle on the outside is what's going to pay big dividends for this Chiefs defense, because we know how important these tight ends are to the game. We've seen it obviously in previous years. Gronkowski, we've seen it, with other teams as well. And so at the end of the day, man, we know that the tight ends and what they bring to the game is very important for a lot of offenses in the league and the success that they have. And when you have an athletic one, like both these teams do, you have to find ways to limit them within your scheme. And so it's going to be very interesting to see what Spagnuolo brings to the table, whether or not they're going to have Tyrann Mathieu on him the whole game, which I don't think will be a good game plan, just because, you essentially take away from what Tyrann Mathieu brings to the game and his creativity and being able to move around and through the entire defense. But it's going to be exciting to see, man, what these guys can come up with, because, obviously Spagnuolo's he's had his back against the wall the entire year. Everybody's criticized their defense up until this point until they start gelling, like I said, over the last 5 weeks of the regular season. And so it'll be really interesting to see which safety is going to step up to the task, and if we're going to see Tyrann Mathieu on George Kittle the entire game.
One interesting matchup that I don't think a lot of people talk about, obviously, because it doesn't get all the glamour, is that both of these teams have phenomenal fullbacks. You got Anthony Sherman with the Chiefs, and then you got Kyle Juszczyk with the 49ers, and those two guys are pivotal in the rushing attack for their respective offense. So I'm looking forward to seeing how they play a factor as well, because they are very athletic in their own right. They can also carry the ball at the goal line, and we know Kyle Juszczyk is big in the pass game for San Francisco, especially in those play-action situations. But we're going to go ahead and turn the page, guys. Let's do some fact fiction, Super Bowl edition. I know, Mike, you're new to the podcast, but this is basically where I'll read a statement, and we'll say whether we believe it's a fact or if it's fiction. So the first statement here, and I'll toss it to Mike and Jerel, you can follow, has to do with the tight ends, which we talked about. So here it is. 49ers tight end George Kittle will have more receiving yards than Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce. Mike, do you think that's a fact or is it fiction?
I'm going to say fact because I really, this is a group that we didn't talk about. San Francisco's defensive line. See what I'm saying? Now, Kansas City's offensive line, they done their job. Obviously get a Super Bowl, but that defensive line that the 49ers have is they're frightening. I should say that pass rush is. So yeah, I as much as I know Mahomes is young greatness and he's going to be getting the ball out there, I don't know. He's going to have a hard time finding some of those guys with that pass rush. Can't believe we didn't talk about them. So I'm pretty sure that my boy Kittle's going to take over. Like I said, he's hungry. He's ready to get the rock. He had 2 weeks off. It's time. It's time. And then he'll probably give a WWE press conference afterwards.
I think for me, I'm going to say fiction that George Kittle has more yards than Travis Kelce just because of the roster and the way that the Kansas City Chiefs work. We know that, Kansas City is looking for the big play. They're always looking to score fast and early. And the way these plays are drawn up, Andy Reid schematically always has some sort of beat route embedded into his pass concepts just because of the simple fact he knows that any one of his four starting receivers can take the top off of defense. And so that always opens up everything for Travis Kelce underneath. And we saw the success in previous weeks.
I'm going to say fact. I think Kittle will have more receiving yards than Kelce. It's about time that he's going to break out. You look at his numbers, 3 receptions for 16 yards against Minnesota, and then 1 catch for 19 yards against Green Bay because they just rammed it down the Packers' throats, and we know that Jimmy G only threw the ball 8 times. So I think Kittle's going to come out with a big-time performance and have more receiving yards than Kelce. Now let's talk a little bit about this Niners front seven. DeForest Buckner, Eric Armstead, Nick Bosa. So here's the statement, and I'm interested to see what you all say, both of you being defensive linemen. The 49ers will accumulate 5 or more sacks on Patrick Mahomes. Fact or fiction, Mike?
Okay. Dang, man, fact or fiction. There ain't no in between. There's no I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna go ahead and say fact because that's a very competitive defensive line, right? Somebody's going to get a sack. So listen. There's 2 position groups that live for the prime time: receivers and defensive backs. Running backs don't live for the prime time because they know, receivers and defensive linemen. Running backs don't live for the prime time because they know defensive linemen are coming to take their head off. You see what I'm saying? D-backs don't live for the prime time because they know if they get cooked, the whole world saw it happen. Quarterbacks don't look forward to the prime time because they know D-linemen are coming for them. O-linemen don't look forward to the prime time. They know D-linemen are coming for them. See what I'm saying? Linebackers don't look forward to the prime time. They know they may have to cover one of those receivers. And if they get cooked, the whole world is watching. And we know punters and kickers don't look forward to the prime time because if it comes to that game with a field goal and you miss, the world saw it. You take a punt, the world saw it. So there's 2 position groups that, let's be honest, are protected by prime time: defensive linemen and wide receivers. Defensive linemen, hey, nobody saw me miss my gap on that play. Wide receiver, hey, I dropped the ball, but I caught another one. Whatever, what happens, right? Nobody cares. So, you have a 3-sack game. They rush for 20 yards. You're talking about your 3-sack game. See what I mean? So, yes. Those guys are going to be juiced up. They're going to be gassed up. They're going to be ready. They want to go get young greatness. It almost seems the 49ers, and we know it's the defensive lineman, so let's just say that. When you play against a great quarterback, oh my goodness, you want that on your jacket. You want to hang that jersey up on your wall like, yeah, I got him. And especially in the Super Bowl. So they're all going to be trying to get them a Patrick Mahomes Super Bowl edition football jersey on Sunday night. And as soon as one of them does, the rest of them are going to get one. So, yes, they are definitely going to get 5 sacks or more in this game.
I'm going to piggyback off you, man. I'm going to say fact as well, just because we know how important this defensive line is to the game. Like I said before, As far as their roster and the talent, man, and their secondary, I just don't think that they have that type of talent to be able to keep up with the speed of the Kansas City Chiefs receivers. And we saw how important these guys were all year to the success of their team. They've got at least 4 first rounders on their front seven, including D Ford. Man, I think he makes it 5. And so, I'm looking forward to see him go up against Mitchell Schwartz. He hadn't given up a sack all season for the Kansas City Chiefs. So it's going to be, pretty exciting. We know Andy Reid tries to get the ball out fast, but we also know that Patrick Mahomes is kind of like an Aaron Rodgers-esque and likes to hold on to the ball to make the big play. And so I think at the end of the day, you give guys with a ton of athleticism more time to be able to get home. The defensive line for the San Francisco 49ers, they are going to continue to junk up the front. And when I mean junk up the front, that means run a lot of games. They're going to be spiking the 3 techniques inside Buckner.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be having Armstead matched up against one of the weaker links on the Kansas City Chiefs offensive line. And so to be honest with you, if it was me, I personally would go to a bear front because of the talent that they have up front to be able to cover all of their offensive linemen, which gives them no opportunity to be able to have the 2-on-1 situations in the pass rushing game. I expect D Ford, number one, to bounce back after last year and what he went through. And so I'm expecting a big performance from him this week.
Yeah.
D Ford's playing against his former team, the Kansas City Chiefs, so there you have it. It makes it even more intriguing. But I'm going to say fact as well. I think the Niners are going to get after Patrick Mahomes, and when we saw them do it against the Vikings, 6 sacks in the divisional round. We saw them pressure Aaron Rodgers to no end in the NFC Championship game. But look, man, 6 different 49ers have registered at least 1 sack in the postseason. You mentioned Nick Bosa. He has 3. Eric Armstead with 2, Buckner with 1, Ford with 1, Thomas with 1, and even Kawan Williams, the slot corner, with 1. So I think they're going to come after Patrick Mahomes. So I'm going to say fact. Now, this has to do with Patrick Mahomes. I'm interested. This is a big topic right here because Mahomes, he's thrown for 615 yards and 8 touchdowns this postseason. So here is the statement. Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes will throw for more than 300 yards against San Francisco. Fact or fiction?
I want to say I'm gonna start off with a fact. If you would like me to take it first, I think we seen last week. The San Francisco team, obviously they got up big, but they were susceptible to a lot of big plays in the second half against the Packers. And so I think when I'm looking schematically at how the Chiefs are built. Offensively, man, they don't have the talent. The Green Bay Packers doesn't necessarily have the talent that the Kansas City Chiefs have on the outside. But the way the plays are drawn up, the deep routes, the over routes, the yards after catch, the quick passes and screens, as well as their play action pass game, I think at the end of the day, Patrick Mahomes is going to have a lot of opportunities to be successful. I think that they're going to have big plays in their secondary. That's why it's so important for their defensive line to have a phenomenal game.
Yeah, and Patrick Mahomes is definitely throwing for 300 yards. That's a fact. Like how Jerel said, I don't know when it's going to come, but he also said, the 49ers, they were susceptible to some big plays in the second half of that Packers game, and we also know this. The Chiefs, on the other hand, are even better in the second half in games. So, yeah, they may get to him early. Well, they're going to get to him early. Excuse me. They're going to get to him. They're going to get to him. That doesn't mean he's not going to respond. It doesn't mean he's going to throw in the towel and give up. No. He's going to continue to play, and he's going to start cooking them up in the passing game, as we've seen him do all year.
And it's really hard because I know Patrick Mahomes, the guy gets it in bunches when he's on, but I'm going to have to say fiction. I'm going to oppose you all. Something in me believes that the Niners are going to contain Mahomes, not completely shut them down. I think Mahomes is going to get over, 250 yards, 260. But I just feel like they're going to suffocate him in the pocket. They're really going to make life difficult for him. They're going to keep everything in front of them. I think this Niners secondary, they are really going to be on high alert, making sure that they're not beat over the top. So I'm going to say fiction. I think Mahomes is shy of 300 yards passing on Sunday night. Now for the last statement here, and this has to do with another big-time topic about the Niners and their successful rushing attack. So here it is. The 49ers will compile 150 rush yards or more against Kansas City. Is that fact or fiction?
No, that's fiction. They're going to get 100. They're not going to get 150. The Kansas City's front seven, they're very good. They have been weak at the run at points this season. I feel with it being the Super Bowl, and like I said, Anthony Hitchens truly taking control of that defense, and, Spagnuolo knowing what it's supposed to look like to stop the run. At the end of the year, stopping the run is actually one of the things that you're supposed to get better at. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I truly feel that they're going to be able to stop the run. They're going to limit the run, I should say. 49ers aren't going to have the huge running day that they did. And then also for this, too, the 49ers aren't going to lean as heavy on the run game like they did in Green Bay. They did it in the Stranger game because they knew they could do it. They knew they could get away with it. This game, not so much. And also, once again, it's time for Kittle to get his. And they know that, and they're going to make sure they do that. So I don't think the running game is going to be a priority for them going into this, because I feel as though they've got some things dialed up in the passing game that we haven't seen yet, that they've lucked out and were able to save for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, so I'm going to say fiction on the statement as well. I think for me personally, it's going to come down to a few other reasons. Obviously I don't think that they're going to have the opportunity to lean on the running game as much as they did against the Green Bay Packers in previous weeks as well. Just because of the simple fact, we're talking about a team who's almost averaging 30 points a game. And so it's going to be extremely tough to run the ball and having time of possession in which you are going down the field. They can move the ball as much as they want, but if they're not scoring and they're ending with field goals and Kansas City's ending with touchdowns on the other end, that's going to quickly go out the window for me personally.
I'm going to say fact here. Again, I know that Kansas City defensively, they have really hunkered down against the run. They allowed 94 rush yards, 4.5 yards per carry against Houston, and then they really took away Derrick Henry, 85 rush yards against Tennessee with a 3.7 yards per carry average. But when you look at San Francisco, they're averaging 235 yards rushing per game in the postseason. So I understand that 150 can be hard to obtain just because of how explosive Kansas City is, but I actually think the Niners are going to be able to come out, control the time of possession, and I think they're going to come out passing. They're going to make Kansas City respect their passing game and then hit them with the run early and often. So I think they're going to eclipse 150 yards rushing. But let's go ahead and get into the game picks. Now we get to see who we're riding with on Sunday. And also, after you make your game pick, I want you to give me a Super Bowl MVP as well. So let's go ahead and turn it to Mike and then Jerel, and then I'll finish it off.
So I'm going to preface my answer with this. Right. 49ers, we know that they're going to get over 100 rushing yards. Not 150, but their rushing attack is going to be – the rushing attack is going to be effective when they need it. And I definitely see them getting at least 1 or 2 rushing touchdowns. Correct. Kittle, he's a beast. He's ready. They're going to feed him the rock. It's big stage. He can't wait to be that WWE monster out there on the football field. He wants to block guys into the ground. He's ready to catch and run people over. He's ready. He's ready to rock. We know he's going to get his yardage, right? May get a touchdown. And that pass rush, my goodness, they're definitely going to have their day. Nobody on that defensive line is going to go home and say, wow, I didn't do enough in terms of getting to the quarterback. That being said, Patrick Mahomes is young greatness, man. I mean, I just don't think you're going to be able to stop young greatness right now, man. We've seen him pull rabbits out of hats, out of rabbits. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't even know if that's possible, but he has done it. Like,
I can't stop laughing, man.
That's a great analogy.
Listen, man, I'm telling you, Mahomes is ready. He's ready. And after last year, and notice I'm talking a lot more about the people themselves, not so much about schematics and everything, you know, because that's a huge aspect of the game. Mahomes is going to have enough poise to say, okay, y'all sat me for the 6th time. That's cool. And it's only the 2nd quarter. That's fine. I'm going to get back up. I'm going to rally my troops. And I'm going to keep dropping back the pass. I'm not scared of you, like Bernie Mac used to say. I ain't scared of you. You know? So, RIP to one of the great ones, man. But Mahomes is ready. Mahomes is young greatness. I believe in that kid. And it's time for Andy Reid to give him a ring, too. So, yeah. It's going to be a rough first half. I'm not going to lie to you for the Chiefs. But that second half, they're definitely rolling, man. And that's when we're going to really see their pass rush come alive. And they're going to carry on with an energy that we haven't seen since we saw Seattle go against the Broncos. Just that they're only going to do it for one half, you know what I mean? Because I think the 49ers are going to come out throwing haymakers to start the game. And they're going to be landing them as well. But the Chiefs got tough chins, so I say the Chiefs are going to take this one. Mahomes will be MVP. He's going to Disneyland.
You got a score, Mike?
Score 17-34-35.
You made some very compelling arguments, man, when I'm thinking about it. When you're going into big games like this, obviously the opening script is going to be things you haven't seen. It's going to be a lot of plays in which the 49ers and the Chiefs necessarily haven't practiced for. And so there's going to be a lot of confusion around the first quarter, at least the first 10 to 15 plays scripted. But I think for me, it just comes down to having 2 weeks to prepare for this defense. And if I'm going back to the Green Bay Packers and the success that they had in the second half, I think just for me, it's just going to come down to how taking this defensive line out the game. And don't be surprised for me if you see Andy Reid open the game with a no huddle situation, as well as the second half, because when you have tremendous defensive linemen up front, you're going to have to take advantage of their talents and their speed. And so, obviously to slow them down, no huddle comes into play, screens come into play. Obviously, San Francisco has, premier linebackers in order to compensate, guys in the screen game. But I think for me personally, it just comes down to Big Red having 2 weeks to prepare for this defense, having all the weapons at his disposal finally. And, we haven't even mentioned Shady McCoy. And this guy has been in and out the lineup. We know what he brings to the table as far as, rushing and catching the ball out the backfield. So like I said, man, just like off the water boy, it's going to be like, last game of the year, can't hold anything back now. Like, it's like you're literally they're literally going to be pulling out all stops offensively. Defensively, it's just going to come up to whether or not they can make enough plays to keep Jimmy Garoppolo off the field. Because we obviously know when he gets hot, he continues to have a very high completion percentage. But at the end of the day, if they're ending their drives with field goals instead of touchdowns, I think I'm gonna give the advantage to the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think overall the Kansas City Chiefs are just gonna be too much for the 49ers to be able to contend with late down the stretch. The 49ers can compete. We saw that against the Saints. They can score at a high volume, but I just think that at the end of the day, the Kansas City Chiefs, with 2 weeks to prepare, healthy guys finally on defense, Andy Reid coming out of bye weeks in the regular season has an astronomical success rate when having 2 weeks to prepare. I think it's almost over 70%. as far as his winning percentage. I'm excited to see. I think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to win 33-27. Another key matchup that I didn't mention was Quan Alexander versus Damian Williams and LaShawn McCoy and Verner versus those guys out the backfield. So I'm really, really, really excited to see this game.
Man, I'm surprised none of y'all mentioned T-Sizzle. Terrell Suggs, man, still playing with the Chiefs, and he's had an impact as well. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what he could do against San Francisco. But I have to roll with the Niners, man. I know Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes, those guys are dangerous. And when they're able to get that offense rolling, we're seeing their defense come through, Frank Clark, Tyrann Mathieu. But I just think San Francisco is going to be able to really establish the run game. I think they're going to be able to control the time of possession, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast. Jimmy Garoppolo is finally going to silence all those who are still questioning his caliber as a big stage quarterback. I think he makes some big-time throws late in the game. I'm going to have an outside-of-the-box Super Bowl MVP pick in 49ers linebacker Dre Greenlaw, who was a fifth-round pick out of Arkansas. He started in the playoffs. He filled in big time for Quan Alexander when he had that torn pec. And I just think he's going to make a big turnover late in the fourth quarter that's going to help set up San Francisco to win this game. And again, it's really difficult because I've been on the fence all week and trying to determine which team I feel can pull away in the end. But I just think Kyle Shanahan, he has that bitter taste in his mouth from that blown Super Bowl game against the Patriots when he was the offensive coordinator for the Falcons. I think he's going to come out with a great offensive game plan. You got to give Andy Reid credit too, because that guy's an offensive guru as well. But I think the Niners win this game 26-23. Dre Greenlaw, the Super Bowl MVP, and I just cannot wait to see this unfold.
Man, when I lay this out, though, real quick, though, let me just comment on this real quick. Do you think Kyle Shanahan is solely running the ball in the playoffs because he is haunted by the previous Super Bowl in which he did not run the football against the Patriots?
Probably.
And so do you think that plays into the part? Look, I'm going to just run it. And at the end of the day, if we come up with a win, we got a quarterback who can throw it, but they going to see that I'm committed to the run first. And so, I think, man, a lot of that stuff plays into my head a little bit, man, and it's so funny when I'm thinking about it. Just because at the end of the day, man, he had an opportunity to win the game. So I know for a fact, moving forward in his coaching career, he is solely he's gonna start and end with the run if he has an opportunity to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I didn't get a chance to really touch base on my MVP for the game. Obvious pick would be Travis Kelce, but in the previous Super Bowl, I'm gonna go back to the running back position like how New England had, and I'm gonna take Damian Williams, man, for Super Bowl MVP. As far as a plethora of running the football and catching the football out the backfield, and the dynamic in which he brings to the table for this offense. And so he's going to be my Super Bowl MVP just based off the success that he's going to have against the San Francisco 49ers linebackers.
All right, Mike, you got any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
I'm excited for the game. The Super Bowl is always, it brings the best out of everybody. And the way that one thing we see is that when teams get close and then they finally get to the show, a lot of times the performance is amazing. You look at Denver, right? They got close, missed it off a blown call or whatever you may want to call it. Then they made it. Then they got embarrassed. Then 2 years later, they went and they did some embarrassing with that pass rush, right? You look at Seattle, losing in the playoffs, then coming back and losing to divisional, losing the playoffs, and then watching a divisional rival go to the playoffs, and they come back and they blow out a team, and you just see this a lot of times with these teams where when they get close, and that's why I thought it was so interesting if the Saints would have made it, because I said if the Saints go, they're going to win. So to see what happened with Mahomes last year, and like you guys said, D Ford is, not being able to make it off of a call or whatever. They're here, and I just think no matter what happens, they're going to be above it, and they're going to play the game the way it's supposed to be played. I'm really looking forward to watching the game. Being a 49ers team that's hungry. They're very hungry because they had to go through the embarrassment of winning, 4 games last year? So you can't tell me that chip on their shoulder hasn't gotten them to the Super Bowl. So, yes, this is going to be a very, very competitive game, right? We've seen violent Super Bowls like the 49ers and the Ravens. We've seen just straight bullying like what you saw with Von Miller against the Panthers or the Seahawks versus the Broncos. We saw opposite ends of the spectrum. We saw score fest with both quarterbacks to like 500 with the Eagles and Brady. Then we saw a straight, steady defensive game the next year with the Patriots and the Rams. And I think this year is just going to be competitive. It's not going to be a big, giant score fest. It isn't going to be a just strict defensive game where nobody can score, but it's going to be a back and forth, punch for punch, blow for blow. You get a sack, we get a sack. We throw a pick, that's okay. We won't force a fumble. Like it's going to be a dog fight. I guess is the best way to say it. And I'm really looking forward to that aspect of it.
For me, man, it's the type of Super Bowl we like to see: a phenomenal offense versus phenomenal defense. Obviously, when you have two offensive, teams coming into this thing, we know that both teams are going to have an opportunity to score a lot of points, but we don't necessarily know how things are going to shake out, with this game. I mean, we've seen the Chiefs win in a high amount of points. We've seen them win in a low amount of points, and as well as the 49ers. They had a lot of close calls this entire season. And so, I think for me, I'm just very excited to see Andy Reid back in the Super Bowl. I think the type of coach that he is in the NFL and how he's revered by so many of his peers, it's very exciting to see a guy that's so humble back in the Super Bowl and have an opportunity to coach in another one. Kyle Shanahan having an opportunity to right his wrongs from the previous Super Bowl with the Falcons. I think that's a phenomenal storyline. Dee Ford playing against his old team who cut him after a mistake that he made in the playoffs last year. I mean, not cut him, but didn't decide to re-sign him. That's essentially a slap in the face, man, because, obviously he messed up last year and everybody was very, very on his case as far as, making a key mistake like that in a game. And so I think I'm looking forward to him and getting and seeing him get his redemption. And as well as it's so many stars around the field, man, from, the receivers to the defensive line. I'm excited to see if this defensive line, lives up to the hype, and these young guys are hungry. I think at the end of the day, they don't fear anybody, and that's the exciting part to see because they're so young, they don't even understand. They're literally just going out there and doing their thing, and they're playing, and it's so exciting to watch, as well as Patrick Mahomes, the leadership in which he instilled in this Kansas City Chiefs team to never let them feel like they're out of any type of game or any type of situation. And hopefully it's not like a repeat of when Seattle played Denver against Peyton Manning and those guys way back in the day. And so I'm excited to see whether or not these guys can live up to the hype and as far as the 49ers defensive line. And if Patrick Mahomes is the guy of the future, if he's the quarterback and the MVP of the league, I'm excited to see how everything goes.
Hey, yeah, Mike, we appreciate you again, man, for joining the show. And I told Jerel earlier, bro, hey, I know you're a free agent, so big-time Cowboy fan. Mike McCarthy's there. Let me know if you need some real estate agent out there to get you set up in Dallas this offseason. I'm messing with you, bro. But, hey, blessings to you as you continue your NFL career, man, and certainly wish you the best moving forward. Big-time fan of yours all those years. You terrorized Dallas when you were in Green Bay. But, hey, man, take care. Blessings, and you too, Jerel.
Thank you again, man. And I'm excited again to be on the show. Mike, my brother, man, thank you so much for taking the time out to be with us today. Like I said before, man, we know how important the offseason is to a lot of players. And so, from our years past of battling in the Big Ten to, being fathers and married men, I appreciate you taking the time out, bro.
Hey, man, anything from my brother, man. I got you, baby.
My man.
All right, man. Well, y'all take care. Have a blessed rest of the day, and let's look forward to this big Super Bowl 54. So, y'all take care.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good one.